Have you ever felt like you've had all the information and come up with an opinion because of a picture that you've seen, yet then you realize that the picture was totally distorted in a way that you didn't know? This is how framing comes into play. This presentation will focus on the framing theory, which will illustrate how the audience's reactions and opinions are shaped by framing. According to the Communication Studies website, framing is a theory of mass communication referring to how the media packages and presents information to the public. We will be looking into the history, the explanation, the application, and the examples, and the conclusion of the framing theory today. So let's get into the history.
According to Ardeval Abreu in 2015, framing theory was developed by Erving Goffman in the early 1970s. DeHinden in 2005 states that this theory started in sociology, then moved into the communication field. Framing theory is used in public relations, journalism, media content, and media effects. According to Ardeval Abreu in 2015, in the early years of framing theory, the term framing wasn't always clear universally and understood the same way, which caused confusion. Framing theory is an extension of agenda-setting theory, but considered its own, studied by Williams in 2004. Ardeval Abreu in 2015 said some scholars thought it was second-level agenda setting. Ardeval Abreu in 2015 studied how framing changed over the years. In the 1970s to 1990s, framing just became a part of communication research. In the 1990s, there was confusion about the difference between framing and agenda setting. Today, framing is more understood by everyone on the same terms, with less confusion about it because it is studied empirically.
According to Ezekiel Asma of the Department of Mass Communication in Koji State University, framing theory suggests that how something is presented to the audience, called the frame, influences the choices people make about how to process that information. The theory contains a message, audience, a messenger, a medium, images, a context, and especially higher-level moral and conceptual. Framing is most commonly used in terms of the frame the news or media places on that information they convey. The use of the frame plays an important role in how a particular issue is presented before the audience and how they perceive it. Noted in the 1996 book, The Art of the Frame by Gail Fairhurst, the common strengths of framing are that issues can be highlighted to emphasize certain events. This allows the media to make a hierarchy of what's important and what people should be concerned with. Since framing in the media is a very powerful influencer, the most crucial weakness of framing is that it is possible for there to be negatively biased media that doesn't prioritize certain aspects based on importance. This can lead to an improper and unethical messages being presented to large amounts of people. Now let's move to how this theory can be applied in real life.
We may not always realize it, but the framing theory plays a huge role in our daily life. All around us, messages are being framed to make us think in a certain way. According to LaChapelle and his colleagues, lawmakers use framing techniques when introducing policy issues in a simple way. It is up to the lawmaker to make sure a broad public can easily understand the problem and available solutions. The media also uses framing theory when reporting stories. Reporters only use the information they deem relevant and convincing enough to support their story. It is up to the lawmaker to make sure a broad public can easily understand the problem and available solutions. The media also uses framing theory when reporting stories. Reporters only use the information they deem relevant and convincing enough to support their story.
The first example of framing has to do with a change in wording of welfare to assistance to the poor. In a study from Chong and Junkman, when asked about welfare, only 20% of Americans thought too little is being spent, but when changing the wording to assistance to the poor, 65% of people said too little is being spent. This shows how alternative phrasing can alter how individuals interpret things. The second example is a study from Kahneman and Tversky, who found that individuals were more inclined to take risks when the losses were highlighted, but when the same information was presented by the gains, people were less likely to take the risk. This explains Porro's idea of how accentuating certain parts of a message can influence individuals to focus more on those parts. So now that we've gone through examples, we'll finish things up with some concluding remarks.
Some central ideas to take away from this presentation is that the framing theory has gone through a lot of confusion over time to make it the theory that it is now. Also, in the previous examples we saw today, we can see how highlighting certain parts of a message can shape how the audience interprets that message. It's also important to note that, again, messages all around us are being framed today. R. Kernahan in 2004 said, according to this theory, people always strive to make the most rational choices possible. Thus, rational choosers should always make the same decision when given the same data.